All right. My name is Colin Mahoney. This is April 1st, 2024, and this is the roundtable discussion for the final exam for iTech 640. All right. So first, we're going to talk about project integration management. So what is project integration management? The role of project integration management is to connect the dots or tie together what the big picture of a project is. A highly important piece of the project integration management of any IT project is effective change management. Bad change management is a big cause of failed projects. Projects move through a set of components or phases that are unique from each other. The five project phases are initiation, planning, execution, controlling, and closing. The project overview document is a written piece that gives a high-level overview of the project. It is important this document is well thought out. Putting the work in on the front end will save you reworks and time later on. This document includes three key parts, which are a feasibility study, constraint identification, and assumptions. Are there any questions?
You mentioned change management. What is that?
Change management is a discipline that has evolved and matured over the past 25 years. Change management says for changes to be successful, we must prepare, equip, and support individuals moving through the changes so that they successfully adopt the changes.
Can you give an example of a change management model?
Sure. One change management model is Lewin's change management model and it has the following three stages. Stage one is the unfreeze stage. So this is the preparation stage. You analyze how things are work now so you can accurately understand what needs to change to get the intended result. In this stage, you can also implement change management communication so employees know what to expect and how to prepare. The second stage is the change itself. This is the implementation phase. Put the change into practice, keep communicating, providing support for all employees involved. And then after that's done, the third and final stage is the refreeze phase. This phase helps you avoid falling back into the old ways of doing things. You'll review how the new processes work and measure management metrics and key performance indicators or KPIs to see how well you've reached your goals. All right, requirements management. The scope statement. The scope or requirements statement is a document that outlines the project goals or requirements. It includes things like the project justification, the end product, deliverables, and objectives. Sometimes this document will refer to other documentation that has been created to not duplicate work. How important are clear requirements? The requirements include all of the processes needed to complete the work of creating the end product. Since resources are valuable and you are only allocated what is thought to be necessary, the requirements of a project need to be very clear and concise to complete only the required work of the project. They are also important that everyone involved has a clear understanding of what the end product is supposed to be. Requirements definition. Requirements definition is one of the most time-consuming parts of the initial planning of a project, as it involves breaking the project down into manageable tasks. The number of tasks is determined by the scope of the project. WBS, the work breakdown structure, or WBS, is a set of documents that represent the tasks of a project. It is an incredibly time-consuming effort, but if done correctly, will help everyone involved understand the scope of the project, which will avoid problems later on. Its purpose is to provide the big picture of the project. There is no formalized standard for creating these documents. Requirements verification. Requirements verification is fairly straightforward. It can be thought about as an agreement between the project team and the stakeholders of what the completed project looks like. Change control is a very important part of project management, especially in today's agile world where clients have more flexibility in requesting changes to the project before delivery. Change control is just a formal definition of how change requests will be handled by project management. Changes could also be necessary due to external changes, errors or omissions in the scope of the project or product, or response to a risk.
If a project has flexible requirements, how do you keep from the scope of the work changing?
So that is what we refer to as scope creep. And while it can't always be avoided, there are a couple of things you can do to manage it. First would be to create a schedule with very clearly prioritized tasks. Second would be to encourage open lines of communication between the stakeholders and the project managers so everyone is on the same page about changes.
Can you explain WBS more?
Sure. Work breakdown structure, or WBS, is a hierarchical visual breakdown of the project into smaller, more manageable chunks or components. It helps the team visualize the tasks needed to complete the project. All right, risk management. A risk or risk occurrence is anything that can affect a project, good or bad. An example could be scope creep, like we talked about in the last slide. Another common name for scope creep is scope risk. So what does it mean to be risk averse? To be risk averse simply means that a person or a project doesn't want to take on a lot of risk. An easy way to think about this would be like an investor that's risk averse would have more money in stable investments like bonds and fewer in equities. What are the risk factors? The risk factors are the likelihood that a risk will occur, the possible consequences, when a could occur, and how often a risk could occur. So, how do we manage risk? Risk management is all about identifying and analyzing risks to answer the risk factor questions. It also includes maximizing the result of a positive event while minimizing the consequences of a negative event.
Can you explain the graphic on the slide?
So this is a picture of the NASA 5x5 risk matrix. It gives a visual representation of any risk by assigning it a value between 1 and 5 for both likelihood and consequences. Then you use those values to plot the risk on the matrix to get an idea of how critical a risk is.
Can you give some examples of positive risk?
Yeah, most people, when they hear the word risk, they think negative. But some examples of positive risks in an IT project are things like getting a grant you applied for and getting additional funding that you weren't planning on, or some kind of change in policy that would result in the relaxing of requirements. These would both cause changes in the project for sure, but if handled correctly, would be a positive result for the product being produced by the project. Communication management. In any communication, there's a sender, a message, and a receiver. A communication is successful when the message being received is the exact same message that was sent, meaning everyone leaves a communication on the same event on the same page. Um, Communication planning. In any project, the project manager will spend most of their time communicating with either the development team or the stakeholders. Because of this, a project's success or failure could come down to the planning of that communication to ensure it's clear and effective. What are some common communication methods? You have both formal and informal verbal, and formal and informal written are the most common forms of communication. Performance reporting. A lot of communication revolves around performance reporting on the project. Some common performance reports include status reports that describe where the project now stands, progress reports that describe what has been accomplished, trend reports that examine the project's result over time to see if performance is improving or deteriorating, and forecast reports that predict the future project status and performance.
Communication is also important for conflict resolution. What are some effective ways to deal with conflict as it arises?
So a couple of techniques to deal with conflict are confronting the problem head on. So working to solve the real underlying issue to whatever the problem is. Another way to manage conflict is compromising or finding a common ground that is acceptable to all parties involved.
Is there any estimate on how much time a project manager will spend communicating?
Yeah, according to the Project Management Institute, which is the authority on managing IT projects, about 90% of the time that project manager spends on a project is communication. All right. If there are no other questions, some references. Thank you guys so much for attending my roundtable. If you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out. Thanks.